Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Simulmedia Live. My name is Matt Collins, and it's a real pleasure to have you joining from wherever you are and however you may be watching. I really, really appreciate you taking some time out from what I know are busy and unusual times to join us for what's going to be a really terrific conversation. I had my preamble to this show all pegged about a week and a half ago. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who works for one of the big uh, brokerage firms, and he's been working remotely, as most of us have, for the last several weeks. And I was catching up with him and asking how he's been doing, especially with remote work. And he said some things that really surprised me. He told me about how the office is in different stages of inviting people back on an optional basis, but that he's really looking forward to using the time that he's been given to reimagine all kinds of things, including the ways that he deals with clients, including how he interacts with colleagues at the office, including his own mission for personal growth and the sorts of things that he decides to learn and improve, and the things that he doesn't want to really do very much anymore, and how he's plotting his career. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's really unusual in thinking forward. But just even in the last 2 weeks, I've had a series of conversations that have basically mirrored that chat I had with my friend. I spoke earlier today with the head of career counseling at my alma mater, Amherst College, and she's talking about reimagining the function of her office and how they service students and alumni and how they work with faculty in the Office of Development to better adapt to an environment that is so different than it was 6 or 7 weeks ago. And if you look across people who work in marketing, they're all now thinking about how do the current conditions, how do they suggest that we all need to be evolving and changing in just about every way that we do business? And that got me ultimately to the conversation I had just a couple of weeks ago with the gentlemen who are going to be joining us here in just a second. From Camelot, an agency that Simulmedia works with and knows very, very well, based in Dallas. And I was talking with their CEO, Sam Bloom, and their president, Ben Cooper, about the things they're doing to advise their clients. And it very quickly, the conversation evolved beyond just where we are today and got to where do we go and what are some of the durable changes that will come of this that don't represent necessarily, far off futuristic thinking, but are actually things that we can start to do today to prepare for what comes next. Things that will be useful today, but also tomorrow. And I think that's a really good theme for the show. And how do we think about transformation, not for its sake and not for some academic exercise, but for how we can do a better job of servicing our employees, servicing clients, servicing partners, and ultimately being more effective through what is an unprecedented time. And with that, I welcome into our show the CEO of Camelot, Sam Bloom, the president, Ben Cooper, and their CMO, Alex Richter. So, Cliff, if we can pull them in, let's get the show underway. There we go. Hey, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, Matt. Glad to be here.
See ya.
Awesome to see you guys. So I thought we would begin this sort of notion of managing through transformation. I was thinking about this through the lens of marketing, and we're all taught in our marketing preparation about the notion of the 4 Ps, about product, place, promotion, pricing. I had a professor who liked to throw on the 5th package. He was very much a retail, or 5th P. He called it packaging. He referred to the 5th P as packaging in his very retail-minded way. But just looking at through the lens of those 4 things, it occurs to me that in those 4 things, there is all kinds of opportunity and ripeness for changes that are happening now. And Alex, I thought I'd start with you. In thinking through the lens of the 4 Ps, are there specific examples, product, place/distribution, pricing, promotional strategy, and execution, that really jump out to you, things that you're talking about with some of your clients now in one of those areas that suggest some of the changes that are top of mind with marketers today?
Yeah, well, first off, Matt, thank you for having Sam, Ben, and I on today. Really appreciate it. Hope that you and your family are really faring well through all this. Obviously, some pretty crazy times. And first, I think, I'll answer your question directly here in a second, but as we've all been doing, myself and my family have been doing lots of soul searching around this time, and it's allowed for that as we've been working and studying from home and, facing those realities. And, in general, coming to grips with kind of the core essentials of what we are as a family, and how, in general, how grateful we are, and that immense sense of gratitude for our situation, because it's, on a relative basis, so great as compared to some that are less fortunate right now. And so, in a very similar vein, our clients have clearly been going through that same kind of soul searching and refocusing of their efforts as a business and in their overall pivots that they've had to deal with. And it's, very similar to what we, prior to all of this happening, focus on with our clients. And in addition to all the kind of core media principles, one of the things that we talk about frequently is how they focus on their propositions, and specifically something we like to call the first, best, and only types of things. And so, what are those things that make that particular business unique? What are the things that they do better or only on a relative basis to the competition and their category and such? And so we've had lots of those conversations over the last few months, heightened conversations because of that. And when you look at some of our retail clients who have faced, unprecedented challenges in regards to how they service their customers, and the propositions and the meaning that they bring to their customers, we've had lots of discussions clearly around that topic. And, you look at one of our clients like Nordstrom, who has clearly a longstanding 100+ year tradition of outstanding service written about in numerous business school case studies and such, and books on service ultimate examples. And, as they pivoted away from servicing customers predominantly in a physical store, how they pivot to only being able to service a customer through their digital channels. And it's been amazing to witness that, because they've invested for several decades now in that capability, and in more recent times invested in capabilities around curbside services and such. And so, as part of that, we've been helping them to kind of magnify that and bring that to the marketplace with some campaigns and such that are really focused around those core essential things that they were already doing, but now are such they're just more forefront in the servicing of their business. And on top of that, it's been really amazing to see, in a kind of similar vein, that service only exists with the team that they have. And so the employee base that Nordstrom has are the ones who, day in, day out, are the ones who are servicing customers and providing that brand experience for them. And so we've helped, Nordstrom in particular with campaigns around employee appreciation and recognizing employees that are doing those things that are enabling that business to continue. So that's been amazing. Clients with similar vein with Whole Foods doing similar types of campaigns around employee appreciation and such, to really recognize those that are providing that interface and a customer experience during this time.
Sam, let me bring you in, because Alex is bringing up what I think is one of the extraordinary challenges, not just of this moment in time, but also the challenge of making something digital that really doesn't seem to want to belong very comfortably in a digital realm. And Alex reminded me of this in bringing up Nordstrom. I'm a Nordstrom customer, and I've experienced their customer service face to face. And what I struggle to imagine is, how can they take that 100-year tradition that Alex mentions, that is predicated on a human touch, and bring it into a virtual realm, when the notion of a human touch is as likely to be an unwanted thing as it is a wanted thing? How do companies that rely so heavily on a service angle to their brand proposition, how can they effectively digitize that experience?
So one, Matt, that's a great question. But first, like Alex, thanks for having us. We're glad to be back here. So, I mean, I'd say across a lot of our clients, they all had 3 or 4 year plans to have digital services and apps and other things. And I think the crazy thing we've seen is 3, 4, 5 year plans have become effectively 6-month plans. And what that really means is, if you're a retailer, it's curbside service. If you're a QSR, it's ordering on an app and providing, a to-go window if you don't have one. It means bigger call centers, or human-mediated things digitally. And so what we're seeing is, necessity is the mother of invention. And so we have seen our clients go, from one guardrail to the other guardrail. And I'll relate one particular client. So we have a client that is a massive national retailer in a pretty big category. And going into this, about 4% of their sales were digital vis-a-vis e-commerce, and about 96% were retail. Well, and the product is not easily purchased because it's a big product. And so, and I think before this, we all thought, that's a tough category to deliver electronically. Well, then the pandemic shows up. And what's interesting to me is, you would think that the channels break out just e-com and, stores, and their footprint was pretty uneven in the pandemic. I mean, you have some states that were like Texas, or Arizona and other places where the, shelter-in-place orders were, let's call it a little less severe than other states like California and New York. So they had, a fraction of their stores open. But what happened is they started to see chat blow up. They started to see, phoning into the stores, where they had, the stores basically have become, for all intents and purposes, sort of mini warehouses. And then you have people buying electronically. And what was interesting is this particular client has, basically, they can do same-day delivery in like 90+% of the US. So what happened is essentially they went from what I'd call an analog signal to a digital signal, almost instantly. And what's been interesting to watch is, they're now, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, seeing, positive year-over-year sales. And what I sort of say is, again, I think as long as there's demand, which is important, companies are finding a way out how to service consumers. And I think one of the interesting things is it was very hard to suss out some of those signals when it was only 4% of sales. Now that it's plus 50% of sales, you can start to see the role of these kind of human mediated, things. And so what we've seen in general, Matt, is clients are pressing the gas across digital. And there was a stunning number yesterday. If you watched the Target earnings call, I think, and Ben and Alex might have to correct me, I think it was 70 million customers used the app during the pandemic. New customers used the Target app. I mean, it was some massive number for, pick up at store. I mean, if you saw the Walmart numbers, they were massive. I mean, just huge numbers. And so what I'd sort of say to you is the future is kind of here now. And for guys like us, when you've got that kind of digital touch throughout the sales process, it's like someone just turned on the light in the room. I mean, we now are seeing things and hearing things that we never saw before. And those particular signals are things we're going to be able to use in interesting ways to, both make sure that we target propositions correctly, as Alex noted, target media correctly, measure more effectively, and then, of course, build better services for consumers. So hopefully that long-winded answer is close to what you're looking for.
It is. Thanks, Sam. And I'm joined here, if you're just tuning in, I'm joined by three really sharp minds in marketing who work at Simulmedia's friend at Camelot. We're joined by Alex Richter, CMO, Ben Cooper, President, and Sam Bloom, the CEO. And for Ben and Sam, this is their second tour of duty on Simulmedia Live. So it's great to have them. If anyone watching, by the way, has questions for any of these fine gentlemen, you can ask it in your LinkedIn window. You can ask it by Twitter if you're watching on Periscope, or on Zoom if you're watching that way. We've got eyes on all those channels, and we will get questions in, I promise, before the end of the show. Sam, I have to ask you a follow-up question. As I'm listening to you, and I did take notice of the Walmart numbers. I hadn't seen the Target ones, but I think to myself, boy, if Walmart and Target were ever looking for that launch pad to really be able to go to Amazon and go, like, I've got something here that I can rival you when it comes to an e-commerce footprint. But guess what? I also have this massive nationwide, essentially real-time distribution asset that allows me to do some things that Amazon, outside of Whole Foods, you're not able yet to do. It seems to me that an accelerant in all of this is that the e-commerce playing field for consumers outside of Amazon is getting a lot more interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what. So there's a lot of parallels to what Ben and I experienced when we were at Blockbuster, and I'm going to get Ben to tell you that story because I think, to a certain extent, I remember when we were launching Blockbuster online, we had a lot of data about how people rented videos. And when Netflix came along, I'll tell you, we were scratching our heads. We're like, why would people order a video a week in advance when 95% of the consumption takes place 30 minutes, or the decision making takes place 30 minutes before someone walks into a video store? Like, all of our assumptions were based on what we knew, which was a video store. And the Netflix model of doing something in advance and ordering something in advance never made sense to us. And if you think about that in context to kind of what we're seeing today in, sort of what the pandemic is like, I'll give you a personal example because I have loads of these. I have a little coffee place that I really like, which you and I have talked coffee. Your coffee is delicious, by the way. And that little coffee place eschews technology. He does not want Wi-Fi in his store. Well, when the pandemic hit, he happened to run his POS on Square. He created a little Square, e-commerce site. There was a push of a button. And so he did order online and they'll bring it out to the car. Well, when I talked to him about 2 weeks into the pandemic, I asked him how sales were, and he said, we're actually above, prior year. And I said, but how can that be? And he goes, the order online has changed the game. And I said, would you have thought about doing order online prior to the pandemic? And he said, no. And I said, will you keep it? And he said, yes. And so I think, that small example was a great example of really what we're seeing. Walmart, Target, all these consumers are discovering things. Heck, Zoom is, and I know when my 84-year-old mother is shopping via Instacart, there are massive behavioral changes that we're undergoing, Yeah,
absolutely right. So Ben, tell your Blockbuster story.
Yeah, I think the point Sam's bringing up is, back in the day of Blockbuster, everybody knew things were going to go to streaming. That was no surprise. The surprise was it took as long as it did for it to hit, kind of critical mass. So every time companies would start to invest in streaming, DVD, lifespan just kept going and kept going. And so you couldn't jump in, feet first the way that you probably should have, looking at the future. The comparison now is companies are being forced to jump in feet first because they have no choice. Now it's not a matter of, hitting the numbers or having something positive to tell Wall Street about, future R&D. Like, now it's about survival for a lot of folks. And so to Sam's point, we're seeing lots of clients, you're seeing other brands where, yes, those 3 and 5 year plans, they're having to figure out how to accomplish that in the next 6 to 12 months. because people know coming out of this, a lot of behavior is going to change. And to your point, people who have tried Whole Foods pickup, probably aren't going to go back. And there's a lot of them who realize like, hey, that's a great way to shop. That's what I'm going to do going forward. The impact then you think about kind of the trickle down impact is, what about all those brands that are impulse items at the cash register? What do they do in a world of all of a sudden fewer people are in line to shop? They're doing it online. You've got to figure out another way to connect, direct to consumers out there.
Again, if any of you are watching this and have questions for really, really sharp agency guys, feel free to ask it, and however you may be watching. Ben, I want to stick with you for this next question, and it's been on my mind just about every time I turn on the television. It doesn't seem to matter what it is that I'm watching. I think I saw a stat about a month ago that something like 265 brands had updated their creative messaging to have some version of, during these unprecedented times, we're with you. With the same, and I'm sure you guys have all seen the montage video that circulated starting about 3 weeks ago, about 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
It showed how they've all used the same piano chords. They've all used the same kind of sequencing of the music to start somber but end optimistically, and they're all using the same turns of phrases to capture whatever it is you want to use to describe the moment we're in. I'm at the point where I'm kind of done with it, and I don't. And not only am I done with it as a customer, but as a marketer, I look at it and I think, wow, like they all had the same idea. And so I've been wondering, are they all going to have whatever the next idea is? But I'm curious, from looking at it from a messaging and a creative standpoint, and thinking about what Byron Sharp, author of How Brands Grow, points out is the importance of distinctive creative. How are you advising clients to think about the creative message that comes next, whatever it is that may come next, given wherever their state of the business is?
Sure. So for us, I think the focus is still the proposition is king. Across all clients at Camelot, we've seen, good creative can help, but if you've got a great proposition, it can overcome almost any creative. And so the clients we're seeing that are having success in this time are the folks who didn't necessarily do kind of the Me Too messaging of we're here for you. It's our clients who looked at what they had and figured out, okay, what's a product or service people need in this time? Let's create that product or service or bundle it and then use that in the marketing. So, folks like Zaxby's, who's a chicken QSR predominantly in the Southeast, created a family pack that they saw, hey, more people are wanting, delivery or drive-through, but people also need value, right now, given the impact to unemployment and everything else. So let's put together value meal, feed your whole family for X dollars. And that proposition has done fantastic because that's what consumers need. They don't need every brand telling them we're all going to be okay. They need the brand to tell you, hey, given your relationship with me, how are you going to help me? And what do you have that's going to help me get through it?
Alex, I want to build on that with a question for you. And that's this notion of the value proposition and finding that authenticity to be able to, speak to it with heart, with meaning, in a way that's differentiated. I imagine right now, and you've all touched on this notion of brands having to take what was at one point maybe a 3 to 5 year plan and compress it down to a period of months. I imagine that one of the things that brand marketers in particular are thinking through is, how do they get to the state of the customer, given how much has changed in the last 8 weeks and how much unknowns await us all over the next 8 weeks? What are some resources, Alex, that marketers can use that they can deploy, considering the limits that face them in their work situations, that allow them to get a read on where their customers' heads and hearts are at right now and how those attitudes may be evolving over the coming months?
Yeah, Matt, that's a great question because, as media professionals, we tend to rely very heavily on lots of third-party research resources. The Nielsen's, the MRIs, the Resonates, those type of resources. And, the reality and the pace of change right now that we're all faced with is so rapid that a lot of those tools aren't keeping up with those insights that you're alluding to. Some are pivoting decently to give pulses on that. We've been publishing a summarized version our team has been putting together around all these insights. We've been publishing those on our LinkedIn profile for those who are interested in seeing those. But in general, a lot of this goes back to prior to the current lockdown realities and shelter in place and closures and such. Did they have a method in which to connect with those customers, either through their social channels or independent customer panels that they could reach out to and connect with in some fashion? So were they listening prior to all this going down? And so we've seen those insights come from the clients who were doing that, and that has been a fantastic resource for those customers and the clients in understanding how they pivot and what matters, what doesn't matter, where they should focus and what they should forget. And some of that's also coming not just from those organized panels, but some organized structure of listening to those in their business that are on the front lines, the call center employees, the chat customer service representatives, taking more of that data than they ever have and using that to understand what's going on. So there's amazing things going on that front. Back on the kind of propositional shifts that our clients are having, we've been really fortunate because some of those have happened naturally. I mean, Ben was alluding to trial of Whole Foods, home delivery or curbside pickup, those kinds of things. We were having to invest heavily to promote those kinds of things. And, due to the current realities, those trials were in some ways forced upon people and their new realities of having access to groceries and such. And so, so much so that we, tapped the brakes on the promotion of those because the demand became far in excess of the capacity. And so some of those realities are here and happen naturally. And as Sam was talking about, our client in the arts and crafts business, a huge renewed sense of interest in that particular category as people were stuck in their homes with a lot more free time on their hands with young kids or kind of re-energizing prior passions around that category. And so it's been amazing to see that. And some of that has been celebrated through campaigns that are recognizing what Michaels refers to as the makers in that category, the people who love, eat, breathe, sleep, that craft category. So it's been pretty cool to see that and a lot of creativity and amazing things going on there.
This time has absolutely zipped right up by, and I actually want to get to some audience questions that are coming up. Sam, I'll direct this one to you. Matthew wants to know, when you look out across the different categories of businesses with financial services, different flavors of retail, what are a couple that stand out to you as likely to come out of this stronger and better than when we started? And what are a couple that you would look at and maybe be a little worried about coming out weaker on the other side?
Well, one is I want to start with the far future because I actually think that's the most interesting. The thing I've got on my brain right now is our world has just gotten a digital shot in the arm, and I don't think we go back. And so I think when you start to think about 5G and the implications of 5G or of connectivity everywhere, I think that will probably be the single most important thing that will happen in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think the appetite will be there. I mean, normally when you think about the rollout of new technologies, we always think about crossing the chasm. I think there's genuine interest in that stuff right now. That's the first one. I really think that will be important. I mean, if anything, you've seen what's happened with discrepancy in now across our fair cities. Some people have broadband, some people don't. So you can imagine at some point, and we happen to have a telecom as or a cable company as a client. And what's been very interesting is, that industry has done really well. That particular client's one of the few companies in their sector that's actually had net adds for the quarter, and it's had very positive earnings. And some of it, yeah, I think they're a fantastic company, but it's also a function a little bit of, DSL versus a coax cable coming into your house. And so I think, there's being pragmatic about it. That's number one. I think, fintech is a very interesting area because what we're seeing is obviously people are going to need access to money, to credit, to product, to all kinds of things. And it's interesting. I mean, if you think about the pandemic, the first wave of some of the funds came through, your taxes. So I think having a relationship with a financial, institution that, either processes taxes or manages your credit scores, I mean, those are going to be really important things in the long term, because that's going to be your lifeline to getting access to products and services, because they're going to know your financial life. So I think, all roads are leading to, financial services companies helping you as a consumer achieve more. And so, again, we've seen in that category just massive growth and massive mobile growth, and, a lot of success in FinServe. And then I'd say, the last piece of this is I think, we have one client that I'm super impressed with, and I start to think about, it's funny, the client is Poppin, and if you're not familiar with Poppin, they're a manufacturer of office furniture. And Randy, the CEO, is one of the smartest guys I know. And, I think temporarily when I look at a business like theirs, they manufacture themselves in China. And their whole raison d'etre was to, basically send product directly to businesses. So if you're a business today and you want office furniture, generally you got to go through the Herman Miller dealer or, some other furniture dealer, and they're slow, and, the model is weird. And so, when I talked to Randy said, yeah, this time period is tough for us, but when we come out of this, can you imagine where our competitors are going to be, where they have these dealerships and these weird models? And so, if I apply that, Matt, to other models, you can now buy a car online. You can, the major manufacturers are allowing you to, a lot of rules have been changed. And so I think what you're going to see is just some massive changes in some massive categories. But for us, I mean, look, we've been very fortunate across our clients. We've seen incredible business outcomes across all of our clients, surprisingly good business outcomes. And I think one is that's 90% of it's luck, but the other thing is we have some clients with some damn good propositions. And, there you have it.
Thanks, Sam. And thank you, Matthew, for that question. We've got one more question. And I think, Ben, I'm going to steer this one to you. This one comes from Bill, and Bill works at a small agency. And he's asked, how have you been able to reassure clients to keep their media spending going during this down time we're in?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So in some cases we haven't, is the answer. For a lot of clients, it is time to kind of, tighten the bootstraps. And so it's all about concentrating resources in the smartest way, which is kind of one of the core tenets of Camelot. And so it's, hey, let's take the dollars we have and put them in the places that we're going to get the biggest impact. Because for most clients, it isn't business as usual right now. And they're feeling at different pieces. So those dollars being really efficient is more important than ever. And again, here I'll give a quick plug for Simulmedia, and that's where you guys have been awesome in that, we get data from Simulmedia in real time about TV consumption for the targets for our customers, which is huge because right now MRI is useless, Nielsen is useless because the media habit's changing so fast. So that's where we're almost kind of real-time data to figure out how has the media habits changed, so we can kind of arbitrage that for clients, and whether that's, you know, through price or just being in the place where there's more eyeballs than everybody else realizes, you can kind of take that smaller budget and make it feel much bigger.
And thanks, Ben, and Bill. Thank you for your question. We're pretty much out of time for the show today, but I wanted to, before we go, Sam, I wanted to let everybody here watching know that later today, I expect we're going to be publishing the first installment of the Sam Bloom and Dave Morgan letters. And it's a project that I know you and Dave have been at for a while as you've been corresponding through this. I wonder if you can tell the audience a bit about where this project came from and what you hope to accomplish with it.
Well, so Dave is, Dave is one of my personal heroes, and I think of him as a mentor. And I often, over the years, I've emailed him, and we've had these incredibly thoughtful notes kind of going back and forth. And the other thing is I was an English major, and one of my thesis was on epistemological novels, if you even know what that is. No one really cares. But the idea was,
great thesis.
The idea was that, Dave is in New York and I'm in Dallas, and we are seeing obviously different things, and we're also in the same industry. And it feels like there are, major things going on. And I wanted to be able to do something with Dave where we could do something in an unvarnished way. And so the idea was to do it as an email thread, because that's generally how we communicate with each other. And Dave is a thoughtful guy, he's an articulate guy. And the other one, there's nobody in the industry he doesn't know. So he's really thinking about things. And then as a guy trying to lead an agency with Ben and Alex, I mean, the three of us are, every day we're making major decisions around things, and trying to collect my thoughts and articulate them to Dave was a way to, think through this stuff. And so it's everything from, when do we open up to, wow, the upfronts are kind of gone, to all kinds of stuff. And so to, Dave and I talking about, I talked to him about getting my ass kicked in Jim Rummy with my wife. So there's a little bit of everything, but, the idea was to do something very human and to let people see how the sausage is made between, how Dave and I are thinking about this stuff. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing. I've seen the letters in the wild. I've had a chance to obviously to see what you each have written to one another, building up to this. But we'll be publishing it on Medium later today, and so look again for those letters between Sam Bloom, the CEO of Camelot, and Dave Morgan, the CEO of Simulmedia. There's some really good stuff in there, and it's obvious, by the way, that there's a real friendship and a mutual respect that comes through in those correspondences too. So. With that, Alex, I'm going to give you the last word for people who want to get to know or get closer to Camelot, get in touch with you guys. What's the best way to do that?
It's pretty straightforward. All our contact information is on our LinkedIn page. You can find us, Camelot Strategic Marketing and Media. We're up there, or CamelotSMM.com. We would love to hear from you. And Matt, thank you.
The dogs are barking for you, Alex.
Really appreciate it. Somewhere, those aren't my dogs. My dog is sleeping right next to me right now. Yeah.
Hey, that's an ender.
That's what's going on. Yeah.
Well, I love it. I can't think of a better way to close it out. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Sam Bloom, Ben Cooper, Alex Richter, thank you so much for being with us. It's really great to have you here. I hope you all stay safe and look forward to having you again on another episode in the future. And for all of you who've been watching, thanks so much for joining. We've got more great content coming next week. We'll update you on that starting either end of this week or early next. But until then, stay safe, be well, everybody. And thanks again for watching Simulmedia Live. Take care. Bye-bye.